Hello and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris and you're watching Consider This. Now, all governments will be struggling with the outbreak of COVID-19, but I think some governments will struggle more than most. It is time for strong, moral and decisive leadership. But how well will Malaysia's new government respond to the crisis, given that it's just a few weeks old at this point? Now, following the collapse of the Pakatan Harapan federal government, new political alignments have also emerged at the state level, and that's what we want to focus on tonight. Of course, this has led to 3 new state governments being formed: Johor, Melaka and Perak. Now, as a result, we're going to be looking at the situation in Perak. Joining us in the studio to discuss this further, we have YB Howard Lee Chuan Hao, Chief of DAP Youth, as well as Harapan Youth Deputy Chief, also State Assemblyman for Pasir Pinji, Perak. Thank you for joining us on the show. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
All right. Okay. So Perak's interesting because Perak Bersatu has managed to buck the trend of an UMNO takeover, unlike Johor and Melaka. Now, I want to talk to you about that. Walk us back through the events of how the state government in Perak saw this kind of trouble or the change, shall we say. Could you walk us through when it started, you started to hear about what was happening?
Well, thanks for inviting me. And in fact, it was a shock. It was more of a shock than anything else because when things started to unfold at the federal level and it became more and more apparent that Tun and Mukris was still strongly on the side of Harapan, there were assumptions made. Assumptions backed by history that the now Menteri Besar and then Menteri Besar, who's closely aligned, not only on a political level but on a personal level, who has always been aligned to Tun and Mukris, there were assumptions that things were going to stay put. Okay. However, even up until the morning that the Menteri Besar, Beja, appeared at Tan Sri Muhyiddin's house for that fateful press conference, it was still assumed to be all right. And I shan't go into personal conversations that I had with him prior to that, as late as literally the night before that. It was a shock. But of course, looking at the larger picture, I think the realignment of the Perak state government now, and if you were to look into the messaging and the language that's been used by the now new Menteri Besar, the very last interview before the announcement, which was when he was cornered by the press outside of Tan Sri Muhyiddin's house, was that he hoped that he was going to be reappointed as the Menteri Besar, and it was precursored by basically he said he's going to be following the acuan, following the shape and the inclination of the federal government. I think that was essentially, and that is what we see now. It's a realignment to be in line with the federal government. So for me, that spells 2 things. Number one, this new government at the state level is predicated or essentially formed purely and simply on the basis of power alignment and essentially power.
What do you mean by that?
Essentially, I think the Menteri Besar wants to be able to have access to federal support and also wanting to be friends with those who are in the highest levels of power. So
okay.
that's just one.
Okay.
And the other one is, of course, something that I wouldn't say this lightly, but I would say betrayal. Betrayal not necessarily just from a switching camps of political inclination, but it's betrayal at a very personal level.
Have you had any communication with him since?
Not since then, no.
Okay, because you were working
We've tried
closely with him.
Absolutely. I mean, like all, you serve at the pleasure of the chief minister
Right.
when you are a state minister. One does that, and when you work closely with someone, political inclinations aside, and yes, there were contestations of policies, etc.,
So
etc.
you said you tried.
Oh yeah,
What were you
at every
trying?
corner.
What do you want to
calls.
talk to him about?
We wanted to talk to him about, look, where are we now? We didn't even know where we
DAP.
as in Pakatan Harapan,
Pakatan Harapan.
we were working solidly. In fact, all 10 or all the other excos, let's put aside those who decided to be inclined and aligned with him.
Okay.
Subsequently, we found out. But the state leadership of all component parties within in Harapan Perak, we tried. Phone calls, we tried to track where he was in terms of presenting ourselves physically in front of him, but all that were to no avail.
Okay, but
leading up to the final. Yeah.
And then after, is there still need for communication after?
Of course there is need, but to be honest, there is a certain degree of anger.
Okay.
And this actually reflects on the ground, actually. There's a lot of anger, there's a lot of political fatigue, there's a lot of lethargy.
When you say it's been reflected on the ground, are you talking about voter response to the
voter
situation
response,
in Perak?
those,
what are you hearing?
Those who supported us, those who got us to where we were on the 9th of May 2018, and in the 22 months that we were in government and someone put us there. And those people who put us there, which was, by and large Perakians, which was what gave us the mandate, they're angry, but they're tired because they're seeing in this a replay of what took place in 2009 after the 2008 general elections.
Right.
It seems like, why is Perak the one state that has to go through it again?
Okay. Have you had an answer to that?
Well, there are many theories, but the anger, the political lethargicness that's felt by activists and voters, the fatigue, especially with what's going on globally, with the financial situation, with the public health situation, with COVID, all this is making people, orang lain cakap muak.
Okay, jela, is the
Jenuh.
word? Okay, all right.
Muak jenuh.
All right, okay. Can I come back to something you said a little bit earlier about the realignment with the federal government? That was the reasoning given by the Perak MB, right?
Yeah.
So I also want to talk a little bit about how on March 9th we had the Trono Assemblyperson Paul Yong as well as Buntong Assemblyperson Siva Subramaniam quit DAP as well as Titi Serong Assemblyperson Hasnul Zulkarnain, he quit Amanah. So all of them had said they wanted to ensure that their constituencies continue to get government aid. Again, reflecting something that Faisal Azumur had said. So why is that not a legitimate enough reason to ensure that their constituencies get the same level of funding and that nothing is disrupted?
Now, I need to answer this on two fronts. I shan't comment on the jumping or defection of those who are not within my party.
Okay.
Because obviously political inclinations, ideological inclinations, and the way one sees one's role in the political system and structure is different in each political party.
But two of them are from
but
your
what
party.
I will comment on is specifically on these two who are
from DAP
members, long-standing members. One is a two-term assembly person, the other one is a third-term assembly person who has a history, but let's put that aside. The DAP has always stood for being in a political party, standing for elections to uphold a certain set of principles.
Right.
To uphold a certain set of ideological inclinations which we hope we could bring forth through government policies. Failing in which, if you are not in government, you try to call for it, you try to press for it, you try to affect policy changes from opposition benches. Now, DAP has been in opposition prior to 2008. Throughout the nation, it's being in opposition isn't something that is alien to us.
Right.
It's not unfamiliar. Now, when these state assembly persons were elected when they were in opposition back in 2013, and with the Buntong State Assembly person when he was elected the 3 terms prior to that, the 2 terms prior to that. Now, are they admitting that they were not able to deliver what the people wanted? And if they want to admit to that, what made them get re-elected term in and term out? So that argument of being able to make sure that their constituents get whatever it is they claim they could get by staying in government, I think that is an absolutely unacceptable answer or unacceptable excuse.
Okay, all right, we're going to have to take a quick break and come back and continue this conversation on Consider This. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned.